And we are live. So happy Monday, everybody. I'm super excited. Welcome to, I believe it's our ninth episode of the BAM series. And I'm super excited for our guest tonight. Um, I don't have many of these opportunities that I get to share with people that were very in a big part of my using days, because unfortunately just a lot of people don't find recovery, and or they've lost their lives or whatever. And so Cece and I, this particular um show tonight is important to me because Cece and I met each other when we were a hot mess, and then two 3 years later we were both complete hot messes. And at that point our children, they mattered but they didn't matter, and I hate to ever say that, but the truth is
True.
what addiction does to you is it takes over you. And as Cece kind of goes in, and a lot of you guys have heard me tell my story, Rachel Piocchini, person in long-term recovery. um you've heard me talk about how my addiction and my when I was actively using, my family and my kids just weren't, they weren't a priority. The drugs and the substances and the lifestyle and the people and the friends were. So
Oh, I
this is just,
remember, Rach. I
I know.
remember.
Well, I have a funny story. So one at your particular house, I had people, I was remember doing makeup in your bathroom, and my friend Stacy, if you get on this, was like, "Are you doing okay? Are you sober?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sober. I'm fine." Just a mess because people were worried about me, but I was obviously not ready to get better. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
but but Cece and I created a really good friendship, and unfortunately, we both went down some pretty dark, ugly places towards both at the end of our going. So I'm super stoked to have you on here. It's such an honor to have somebody who meant a lot to me back then find recovery and be an advocate and be in recovery and be a part of, to see you be a part of your kid's life, and to be able to know, like, we're having Christmases and birthdays with our families. Like, that was something we just wanted to do so bad, but we couldn't do. And,
Right.
we had a lot of similarities with just things that had happened back then to a lot of great things that are happening now. So that's fucking awesome. I can't wait to have you share with us. We're in a crazy time, as everybody knows. Welcome to COVID. COVID. Well, we're not in December just yet. We're about to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
I will go ahead.
I never thought that I would be telling my story on
Yeah.
a tablet or a
With me.
TV. I
Like,
mean, it's weird.
I know. I know. So this is awesome. So I mean, we could, if you want to chit chat for a little bit, or if you want to just, well, we could just kind of go jump into
Okay.
your story, and then we can go into some things afterwards. But this is a dear friend of mine, Cece, and we will just kind of start off with, you could just start off and tell us your story and how it
Okay.
all began as a East Side Country Club girl, because
That's
everything
right.
to where
No
you
longer
are.
that girl.
So I will let you kind of take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Rach. Well, my name is Cece. My sober date is August 19th of 2019. And to say that out loud is very surreal to me because I never thought in a million years I'd have a sober day because I didn't want to be sober. I like doing drugs. But anyway, we'll get to the end of that at the end of that. Okay. So anyway, to start off with, I was adopted into a very, very awesome family as a baby. And a lot of people think that a lot of my problems came from being adopted, but in my family, it's not the case. I mean, I had everything. I was spoiled rotten. Um, my parents wanted me forever, so I got everything I wanted. I still to this day, I still get what I want. But
And
so
as
that was
Cece
when.
kind of goes in, and a lot of you guys, sorry, that was me.
Can you hear me now? Is it hard?
um, Bree, is that better? I hear you fine.
You hear me fine? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So I had a really good childhood, and I had some brothers and sisters and everything, and life was going really good. And Um, at the age of 5, I had an older brother who started sexually molesting me, and not just molesting, but intercourse and all that. And he made me feel like it was okay and that that was normal, and we were supposed to be doing those things, and love and all that nonsense. And so, from a young age, I started learning that um, the wrong way to show love and the wrong way to receive love and the wrong way to do everything in my life. So from a young age, I started, buying my friends and, wanting everybody to be my friend because I was an overweight, unhappy I mean, not unhappy, but I was overweight and I didn't have a lot of friends. So, yeah, so that, my thing with my brother happened from about 5 until I was about 16 years old. So it was a big, huge thing. And interesting enough is I never even talked about this until I went to about my 7th rehab. But I'll get back to that. So I had a pretty good childhood. I was really shy and timid, and I was kind of overweight. And so my biggest thing to cope with everything in my life was food at that time. And so I ate a lot of food, and I was very overweight, and I would get made fun of, but I had friends and I was happy, and I never really thought or felt like I looked ugly. It was more just the eating for comfort anyway. So got through elementary school, everything, junior high, and I met some good friends that wanted to do bad things, and I was just wanting attention. So that's when I kind of started doing some bad things, but it wasn't too bad. But I grew up in a very LDS home, so it was horrible to my parents. um, I never, I started drinking when I was 14 years old. The person that gave me my first drink was my older brother, unfortunately, because, he was, he just did everything. He was my, even though he was doing the bad things to me, he was my hero and my idol. I loved him a lot. But he had made it so that I thought that everything was good with me and him. And if I did those things with him, that it was acceptable. And he also pointed out to me that my parents loved each other and they were, taking naps and doing things like that, so it was okay. It was crazy. But anyway, so I started drinking with him when I was 14 years old, and I loved it. I loved it, but I didn't really start drinking heavily. I just drank every once in a while, and I started smoking and just kind of being rebellious. And the year of 14 to 15, I lost a lot of weight. And I went to ninth grade that year, and no one recognized me. And I had kind of stayed friends with these rebellious kids. So by losing the weight, becoming more rebellious, learning about boys, um, I really felt like I belonged. And so being a bad girl and, liking the bad boys and doing all that stuff started at a really young age for me. And it was just because I felt included, so um so ninth grade, I met a boy, and I, fell in love, and and all that good stuff. And I ended up, losing my virginity at 15 years old. And but and to everybody else and my friends and everybody thought I was cool because I lost my virginity and all that, but it wasn't losing my virginity because that had happened when I was 5 years old. So I thought that I was again doing the right thing and just doing sexual things with this guy all the time, and just doing what I thought was right because that's what you're supposed to do to make the person that you love happy. So I just kept on being very sexually active at the age of 15. It almost became an addiction to me, and I broke up with that boy, and started dating other boys. And um, that's when I met my ex-husband. My first husband. I was 16 years old, and we would drink a lot. But no drugs. All my friends experiment with pot and stuff, but I never got into that. I was just a drinker on the weekends pretty much. And my ex-husband told me, my boyfriend at the time said to me, if you get pregnant, we can get married. And I said, oh, that sounds amazing. So I got pregnant and we got married. My mom made us get married 3 weeks after the baby was born. And that marriage was horrible, 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 horrible. He cheated on me a lot. I got an STD when I was pregnant with my second son because we decided, I kind of decided if I had a baby that my marriage would be saved. So I had another baby. But he cheated on me and gave me an STD during the second pregnancy. And so I finally called it quits with him. At the age of 20, I was a single mom, 2 boys, 3 and newborn. I had graduated high school and I had gotten my beauty license. So I had gotten my cosmetology license and all that. So that was good. So the next 10 years, I just worked really hard and did the mom thing. But in the meantime, I'm partying my ass off and I am drinking a lot and I'm going to clubs and I am sleeping with everybody that gives me attention. And this is when and at this time, after my boys were born, I had gotten to about 300 pounds at that time. And it was because I was emotionally eating and I had all this responsibility and I didn't know how to cope with it. And being a single mom at these 2 little babies was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was so tiring. And so I would just act out and do all these things and eat and eat and eat and drink and party. And but I was successful at that time. I was managing salons and taking care of 2 kids and doing it. Um, so at that time, I moved, and my mom and dad actually offered to buy me a house, a townhouse in Midvale, and I was on housing at the time, so I was like, sure, great, because I was a single mom, and that's when my mom and dad kind of started controlling me with money at this time, because before they just bought me stuff all the time, and I loved it, but this is when I started seeing the control with my mom and dad. So anyway, so my mom bought us this house and I moved into this house. And my ex-husband, I had remained friends with my ex-husband, my first husband. And he had gotten into drugs, into meth. And that's why I finally and ultimately divorced him. And I didn't even know what it was. I had no idea what drugs were. I was this, East Side girl. I lived in a bubble. I had no idea what anything was until, I met my ex-husband and he introduced me to all these things like gangs and drugs and all this stuff. And so yeah, I was living in Midvale and just kept on drinking and drinking, and I had a good friend of mine that came over and we just started smoking a lot of weed. And at that time, my oldest cute boy, Landon, his name is Landon, he was about 7 or 8 at the time. And he kept on getting in fist fights at school because people would call me fat and he would defend me and beat people up. And so at that time, I decided to go and get a gastric bypass. And this was when I was 26 years old. Now, mind you, I had smoked a little bit of weed, drank, okay, nothing at 26 because food was my drug, okay? So at 26, I decided to go get a gastric bypass. My parents paid for it, of course, fork over the 25 grand to pay for it. And I get the surgery done. At that time, it is such a brand new process that nobody warns you that when you're done, you cannot I love you too. You cannot eat anything. And at that time, nobody knew the psychological effects that it would have on people, because what happened is for so long I ate for comfort, and then my food was taken away and I couldn't eat at all. Now mind you, I lost 150 pounds real quick. In about 9 months I lost 150 pounds, and I looked really good, and I wasn't used to the attention, and I wasn't used to all of any of that. And at that, I mean, you thought I was a hooker before. Yeah, I became a serious little hooker and a serious little player, and I turned it around because men were giving me attention, and for once in my life, and I was like, "Oh yeah, now you're giving me attention. Well, here we go." So I became. That's when I started playing guys, but because I didn't have my emotional food as an outlet, that's when I found meth. And I had my best friend. My best friend came over and said, "Cece, you got to try this stuff." And I didn't know what it was, and I did. And this is back in 2002 when meth was pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And I did a big old line of it, and I was on cloud nine.
Yeah.
It's the very first high you ever got. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even ask what it was. This stuff had ruined my marriage. But I trusted my friend, and she was like, "Cece, try this." Okay. So I did a big old line, and I was on cloud nine. And I started scrubbing and painting and cleaning my house and being the best mom ever and football mom ever. And I could accomplish the world. I was the best mom. I was the best daughter. I was the best, I was a football mom. I did everything. I was a PTA president. I could do everything. And that lasted for a few months. It was great. And then I started bringing in the people. These people I still know to this day. 25 years ago, I started bringing these people into my house, and that's when it all started going downhill. Is when I started associating with the drug people, and I started letting them into my house and being nice to them, and people started taking advantage of me and taking my kindness for weakness. But I started learning a lot of things at that time, what manipulation was, and what people did to get drugs. And I had my first car stolen, and my first drive-by shooting and all that stuff. But at that time, you know I was getting so much attention, and guys liked me, and so I thought I was this badass bitch. And my collarbone started showing, and I thought I was sexy as fuck.
And I used to be so sick. That's what I wanted. I wanted my collarbone. I was like, "Oh, I have a nice collarbone."
Yeah. Now I start seeing that, and I'm like, oh, see, it started
We
to
got to
show,
do
Rachel. I
something.
got to cover that up. Need to eat some food. So, sorry, if I'm rambling, you just let me know, okay?
No, you're doing great.
Okay,
You're doing great.
so at that time is when I first started. I've been introduced to gangs with my ex-husband because he was from Glendale. Okay, so he took me from East Side Country Club girl down to Glendale, and I rolled up my windows, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And he's like, "Cece, bullets go through windows," and I was like, "Oh my god!" It scared me, but I was already accustomed to gang life by then. Okay, because I'd been in a drive-by shooting. I got this. So, that's when I got introduced to gangs because I only date guys who've been to prison and have tattoos and killed a couple people. That's the only guys I date. So that's when I first started liking those guys, and I got wrapped up real quick. I always was really smart though. I knew better, and I knew when to bail out, and I knew when not to bail out. And I think that got me out of a lot of trouble because I still had a conscience, and I knew when not to do things. I think, yeah. But I still was out of control at that time. I mean, I remember, just crazy stuff, and I thought it was cool, and just just wanting the next thing. But I didn't think I was out of control at that time. Dragging my kids to parties. My mom pretty much raised my
Insanity.
kids, but thinking everything was just great, and my son entertaining like all the drunks and all the people. And I'm just thinking that I'm just as great as mom. Why? Because I'm always with my kids. They're always with me. I'm not doing anything bad. Those moms that leave their kids behind and stuff like that, they're the bad ones. Okay, so that was when my kids were about 8 and 10. 7 and 10. And then at that time, I met my second husband. Okay. And he was so different. I met him at a club. I didn't meet him at a club. He was supposed to be a one night stand, but he called me and he said, I want to take you and your kids on a date. And I said, are you kidding me? What? You want to take me on a what? Right, it's a date.
Yeah, right. Date,
Yeah.
what's date?
So I couldn't believe it. I said, okay, sure, let's go on a date. And he took me and my rambunctious boys out, and he was so nice, and he just paid for all our stuff, and he wanted to go have fun with us after. And so I instantly I fell infatuated with this guy. It wasn't in love, because it wasn't love. I felt very different, and I thought that if I did a different way in life, that maybe I wouldn't do drugs anymore, and I could. I just really thought that this guy knew what he was doing, because he wasn't doing drugs at the time, and he had a car and he had a job and he knew what he was doing. And my kid's dad wasn't around, and so I was kind of looking for a father figure for my boys, and so I started dating this guy, and he swept me out. Oh, he swept me off my feet, and just I thought I had arrived. And 6 months, down after we started dating, I was done with drugs. I was done. But at that time, that's when he started being controlling, and he started testing me. But he made it to the point. I was married. I was dating a narcissist. He made me think that I was the bad one, and he made me think that he was the good one, and that everything he was doing was in my best interest, down to the point where he was disciplining my boys, to the point where I wasn't comfortable with it anymore. Never hitting them, but very verbally abusive. But I trusted him, because I thought I was doing a horrible job, because my boys were out of control and I was doing drugs. And so I really trusted him. So I kept him in my life, and he proposed a couple months later, gave me the hugest ring ever. And I was so excited, and I was getting married, and we decided to build a house, and we were doing all these things. And I was having like the biggest wedding and gorgeous wedding and, ever. And I was so excited. And meanwhile, I'm not listening to my kids, and I'm not listening to my boys, and hearing the concerns. And the only one that's really, really, really having a hard time is my son, my oldest son, Landon. I have Landon at the time, who is 11, and I have Cody, who is 8. He had just turned 8. And Landon, my oldest son, is very ADHD, and has had a lot of dad issues, and is a real big handful, really hard. I've taken classes, I've done all this stuff to take care of him, but mom is also, I was 17 years old, raising him, dragging him to parties, doing all this stuff, not being the best example, because I'm a child myself. So by the time he's 10, 11 years old, I'm trying to do better by him. And so I think that having this guy around is going to be better for him. Anyway, me and Troy are getting married, and we're about 2 weeks away from getting married, and everything is okay. And I'm not happy, but I think I'm doing the right thing. Oh my gosh, I'm low battery. I gotta get a battery charger. Oh no, hold on a second.
I just fell off my chair.
No, that can't happen. Okay, Sorry. Do you guys have a charger?
So rad.
Is it in your mom's house downstairs? Okay. Sorry, guys. Oh my gosh. Anyway, okay, I'll keep talking. Sorry. Okay.
This is real and it's live, everybody.
This is real life. Do you have a charger for this? For your thing?
Yeah, but I don't have. He just keeps on taking my shit.
Okay. I'm just on the live stream right now and I'm talking. I'm just about to die. Okay. Sorry.
It's all good.
We're taking a walk. Okay, so Rachel, remind me where I was. Do you remember?
You
Yeah, I
were going to
remember.
get married. Yeah.
We're talking about, I was about to get married and okay, so I'm about to get married and I'm happy, everything's going good. And Landon, my oldest, is going through a lot of problems in school. He's a little shit. He's a hellion and I can't handle him. And anyway, so one day I get home and I'm not going to go through the whole story because it's a long story and I'll tell it some other time. But I came home and thank you. I found my son hanging in his closet. He had hung himself at the age of 11. And it was a really hard thing for me. I can't say that I handled it well because I didn't. But I tell you what, I handled it the best way I could. And I knew that I had to keep on living because, where's the plug in here, Mom? Right there? No. Okay, right there. Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Okay, we're all together now. Okay. Too many chaos everywhere. Okay, so anyway, so my son hung himself. And at that time, I was just about to get married. I was 2 weeks away from getting married. And I was beside myself. My dad was actually giving me benzos without doctor's orders, just handing me benzos, because I didn't know what to do. I couldn't handle the stress. I just lost my son. I was getting married in 2 weeks. I didn't like the guy I was marrying. I didn't like him at all. Deep down inside, I blamed him for Landon's death, for Landon hanging himself, because I felt like my son was fine before that. I felt like he was out of control, but that I was coping with it, I just wanted a positive male role model. And so I didn't want to blame this guy I was going to marry, but deep down I did, but I stuffed it. So April 15th, my son died, and April 29th, I married this man. That deep down I despise, but I think it's the right thing to do. And quite frankly, I really don't know right from wrong at that time. I am I really don't care now, but I'm glad I have pictures and I'm glad I had a video because I don't remember my wedding at all.
I don't remember mine either.
I was so drugged up and because my dad just kept feeding me things. And I remember that I didn't want to have sex with my husband on my wedding night. And I just remember being miserable. But because of the way, I was kind of raised that you don't feel and you don't show emotion and you just kind of have to buck up and keep on going. And so that's kind of what I was doing. I was bucking up and I was keep on going. And I knew that I had to be strong for my kids. I felt like I had to be strong for my parents because they also lost their grandson. And quite frankly, I didn't know how to survive. So I just had to keep on going. Going back on drugs at that time was like the farthest thing from my mind. I just kept on going on a good path. I wasn't doing drugs at that time. I was actually in my church. I had gotten back into my church because my husband now, let's say we're married, we're husband and wife now, wanted me to be the perfect LDS wife. And he wanted me to marry him in the temple and he wanted all these expectations from me. Cook a certain way. Um, I remember driving down the street because if I looked at a truck, which I love looking at trucks, if I looked at a truck a certain way, I had had sex with that guy. He was just very, very condescending and rude and very manipulative. And he was starting to wrap me around his finger and get me to a place where I never thought I could go, because I'm a pretty strong chick. But he knew exactly that I was weak, and he knew exactly what he was doing. And he started doing it from day one when I met him, and it just kept on getting worse. And after my son died, the next thing he did is he ended up going to my parents, and the only person that I ever confided in my brother's molestation was my ex-husband, my husband. And he went up and told my parents about it. So he just kept on doing all these things that just kept me getting more and more down and out on myself, with no self-worth, with no self-esteem. And if people know me, that has never really been a problem for me. Even when I was 300 pounds, I still had self-esteem. I still thought highly of myself.
Yeah.
So time went on. I actually went through the temple by myself. I was in the Relief Society presidency. I wore the garments and all, taught Relief Society, did all that stuff. But meanwhile, I was cracking some beers on my way to church. I was living a double life. I was doing everything opposite of what I should be doing. I wanted to believe in the church. I really did. I wanted to live that life. And in Eagle Mountain, where I lived, you kind of have to live that life. No offense towards Eagle Mountain, but you kind of have to. And if you don't, you're kind of considered an outsider. And so I started drinking a lot to cope with Landon, but I was also corresponding with my church people and telling them, and they kind of made it okay. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep on doing it. So I kept on living this double life for a long time. And then what happened was, is I just really started getting more down and out, more down and out, more down and out. I had a little girl, which was exciting in this process. But after I had my daughter, I really started resenting my husband. I hated him. And I would drink every night, and I became the biggest alcoholic ever. I mean, I'd wake up in the morning and drink. I would go to bed drinking. It was horrible. And so I finally got a visit from my husband at the time's ex-girlfriend, who had a child with him. And she came to me and she said, "What is wrong with you? What is going on with you?" Because she had seen the big decline in me. And we had talked, and the same thing had happened to her. And so she gave me the courage to bail out. And at that time, I bailed out of that relationship. And I never looked back. And I learned a lot from that, thank goodness. But okay, so I bailed out of that relationship. And this is when life got really, really interesting. Go upstairs, Kay. Go up to Daddy. Okay, my 2-year-old. Say hi. Hi.
Hi, beautiful.
Hi.
Okay, so at that time, I trying to think. Oh yeah, getting divorced. He became a psychopath, and he went to the courts and told them that I was using drugs on a Friday, and got a immediate protective order. Got my kids taken away from me, and I hadn't touched drugs in 7 years. So I relapsed at that point on meth. Stopped drinking, but did the meth, and that's when DCFS got involved. I had used meth one time, and they had found out. My ex-husband had found out, and yeah. So at that time, DCFS got involved, and I got divorced, and I immediately jumped right back into having sex
Right where you left off.
Yes, everywhere I left off, if not worse. And that's when I went to my very first rehab, because DCFS made me. And I was living in Utah County at the time, and I had never been to jail before. And I experienced my first jail thing, and it was I actually called the cops on myself. I called on I called on my husband because I was drunk and I was mad at him, but they ended up taking me to jail, and he ended up come getting me. It was stupid, but um, so that was my first jail experience, and after that, it just kept getting worse. Um, so okay, so I went to my first rehab trying to get my kids back. It was an IOP. I actually got my kids back, but then I lost them again, because I had relapsed on spice. And that's when I experienced my first inpatient. I went to Foothill, and it was Foothill is, if anybody doesn't know Foothill, it's a treatment center that is part of the Utah County Jail pretty much. It's right outside. And uh, at that time, I'd never been to jail. I didn't know what jail food was. Okay, I had walked into jail and been bailed out. I didn't know what jail food was. They served jail food at this place. I mean, it was just like jail, but a nicer facility. It was my first experience not having freedom, for sure. I stayed for 28 days and met some cool people, but they didn't talk about recovery at all. It wasn't like that at all at the beginning. It was just staying sober and, getting out and, trying not to stay sober and just having a cigarette. That's all we cared about, is getting out of rehab and wanting a cigarette and going to have sex with more boys that you met in rehab, right? So, so that was I did. And the first rehab I walked into, the Foothill we stayed in, of course, I meet a guy. Yes, that was my first rehab romance. And we get out of rehab and we don't immediately start doing drugs because we're being strong. And we go to a couple of meetings at the Palace a week. So we're okay. And we start smoking spice. And we're like, ooh, we can go to rehab. We can do all this stuff. As long as we smoke spice and stay under the radar, we're cool. And this guy, of course, has been to prison a million times, has tattoos everywhere he's hot, just like I like him. And
Our dream guys.
yeah, most definitely. Yeah, now in rehab, he's never had a driver's license. So, I think I'm in love. And he eventually, the spice isn't good enough. We ran out of spice and we started doing drugs. And I went to smoke some meth and he said, don't smoke it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you need to shoot it. You've never tried it until you shoot it. And I'm like, okay, sure. And now let me tell you something. This is 2012, 2013, 12, 2012. Meth sucks by this point. Okay.
I know.
And let's be real here. Okay. And so I'm like, okay, so I try it and oh my God, there's my other love. Oh my God. I love, I can be dramatic like that because it's my love. It's the love of my life.
We fall in love with our substance for sure.
Right. And I have found that falling in love with the needles is a whole different thing, from talking with other IV users. You remember that first day, you remember everything, and it's crazy. But that's when I started using IV meth, and it was a whole different experience, a whole different game, a whole different type of people, a whole different ball game. And that's when I really started getting into trouble. I got my first shoplifting charge, just because I had been gone forever and I hadn't eaten. I couldn't find I was sitting in Springville with no gas and I need gas, so I needed to do something. So that's where I first started getting my charges and just kept on using and using and using. And he ended up going back to prison. I got 2 DUIs in 4 months. So I ended up back in rehab. But this time, my mom had put me in a nice plush country club rehab because that's how my mom is. And the difference between going to Foothill and going to the place I went to was night and day. It was like a whole amazing experience. Now, mind you, we went to meetings, but nobody had introduced me into recovery yet. I had no idea. I had no idea what recovery was or how it was to be in recovery or none of that nonsense. I was just buying time, trying to get out of this so I could get off paper and do all that stuff. And so I got out of treatment again, graduated treatment, again, got out, didn't get my kids back at this point, not really caring about the kids. You know, I'd given custody of my daughter up to her dad because he is impossible. Couldn't fight him anymore in court, couldn't do that anymore. So I'm at that point, I'm thinking it's better that my kids be with him because, you know, he's more responsible. And my son, my only living son, Cody, he's with my mom. And I'm thinking, oh, she spoils him rotten. They're good too. So you start believing this stuff after a while. Okay. And this is when I get back associated with my old gang people and, you know, start doing crazy ass shit. Crazy stuff.
I remember.
Yeah, Rach. And that's when I met Rachel.
Yeah.
2013.
Yeah, crazy time.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I met Rachel in 2013, and it was with a different group of people, you know, because you have your certain groups, and she was a different group that I came associated with. And I remember, though, at that time, that's when I just started getting really bad, but I still would go home a little bit at that time. You know, you would too a little bit. But I remember us both going, because I lived in Lehigh.
Yeah.
And I had a beautiful home, but it was also the haven and the trap house.
Yeah.
To everybody that did drugs, because I had like the biggest gang members and the biggest like drug dealers out there living in my house. Come on over. Heck yeah. You got lots of drugs. Come on over. You can live with me and I pretty much served them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But I got free drugs all day long. Rachel knows she was there.
I know.
She knew to come up, but Rachel was also my drug dealer there for a while too. So yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, I had some crazy people living with me. And at that time, that's when I got raided for the first time. And realistic things started happening, being crazy. Like stuff started happening where CC was gonna start getting in major trouble, and I didn't like it. And then you only get bailed out so many times, and my mom can only pay so many attorneys to get me so many things off, you know. And so I moved back with my parents because the city of Lehigh said you are kicked out of our city. Same with Utah County, pretty much. Get out of our town. So I am kicked out of Utah County. Okay, I can't go back. So I go live with my mom, and I, you know, start at that time. I hadn't gone back to rehab yet. Nope. So I start dating this guy, and and this whole time I'm kind of messing with the same group. I'm still living. I'm at my mom's house. So I start, you know, pretty much couch surfing everywhere I go, or hoteling it. You know, I did a lot of hotels, but I pretty much had a best friend that I kind of lived in and out of hotels with, and me and him were inseparable. But we just did a lot of drugs together. That's all we did. Just, you know, running around, just, you know, running amok, having a good time all the time. Thought I was on cloud nine, just doing my thing, not caring about the world. Kids were taken care of. You know, first time in my life I could actually do what I wanted. So yeah, so I just having a fun time. I thought I was just partying, having a good time. And then I met a new guy, and he was a heroin addict. Now this is when I am 40 years old. Okay, I'm 44, so this story is almost over. I'm 40 years old, and I meet a heroin addict, and I am at the height of my addiction. You know, I'm shooting up, you know, about a gram a day of meth. I'm doing a lot of meth and just having a blast, partying it up, and not doing anything really bad or shady. I would sell stuff. I would get stuff from the DI, and I would resell things. So I always had drug money. I never stole a lot at that point. Okay. Anyway, so at that time, I started doing heroin, and my life went downhill so fast. And I got my boyfriend that I was with at the time. Me and him got kicked out of my mom's house, and I became homeless. And I lived under a bridge for 7 months, and that's when I met a lot of people, but that was the height of my addiction. And the East Side Country Club girl had gone from, the highlight of my life, having everything I wanted, to living under a bridge. Always staying positive, always keep going, but living under a bridge. And at that time, I had gotten so many charges. Um, they had ordered me to go to adult recovery services, ARS,
Mhm.
and I just told them, I said, I am a heroin addict. I never thought I would be a heroin addict, and I need help. And
I got
so,
chills.
yeah,
Like my all chills and my face.
yeah, I never thought in a million years, never thought that I would be shooting up heroin and living under a bridge. Um, and I also have a little boy to this day who is 23 now, but he has always been my side. And he came to me and he said, he would tell me, Mom, no matter what I've gone through all this, um, my 23-year-old, I'm the height of my addiction, shooting heroin in my arm, and my 23-year-old is telling me that I'm his hero. And he doesn't care what drugs I'm on because I'm his mom. Okay. And I've always been there for him. So he's going to be there for me. And that's how my kids are. Is I've always raised them to be good no matter what, and to take the good with the bad and always be there for people. Unconditional love for sure. And so knowing that I was at my very low and knowing I had all this supportive people behind me, and I knew I had to do something. So I started my journey at that point, and I started going to rehab after rehab after rehab. And
I know. I
I'd
think
get
I
in
helped you get into
touch
like
with
3.
Rachel. I'd get in touch with you every time I went to rehab, because I would watch that. You're the reason why I get back into rehab, because I would get on Facebook and I would see all these motivational quotes and Rachel's posting, and I'd be like, Rachel's getting sober here. If she can do it, I can do it. So I would watch you, and I remember messaging you saying, okay, I'm going back to rehab. I'd get kicked out, or I would go and use again. I couldn't get it right. And the thing, and I'm telling you right now, the very last rehab I went to still didn't work. I still got out and relapsed.
So you
But
said something interesting to me before. Well, you've mentioned it a couple of times, and I
uh-huh.
want to touch on that because and I think it's important because we'll have a lot of people that have experienced, rehab hoppers.
Yeah.
You've said multiple times you went to rehab, but they didn't teach you how to be in recovery.
Yes.
And so what do you mean by, I know what you mean by that, but
Yeah.
I think that's so important as we
Yeah.
start to really talk about when we find recovery, like what does that mean? And so many times the people like you go into treatment, and you're going into treatment after treatment after treatment, and you're being taught pretty much all the same things, just in a different way, but we're not being taught how to be in recovery. And so what do you mean by that, and what made this last time different to where you're able, because you're over a year now this time, right?
Yes.
You just
Yeah.
got your year. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 15 months. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In the summer, I remember.
Yay.
Yeah.
Praise God. Well, this is what happened is I
Uh, I don't know what happened. There's a good chance that her phone died. I hope that it jumps back on, but hopefully she's going to jump back on. But I want to touch back on on what she said there, because this is really important. A lot of times, and so what does it mean when we say, I wasn't able to find, I didn't start working on my recovery. And so a lot of times, there's a lot of people who believe in a 12-step group, which is fine. I have nothing against the 12-step group, but there's a lot of people um there's a lot of people who recover in a different way. Oh, good. Here, you're back.
just happened.
I don't know. So
That I hate electronical stuff, Rachel. I hate it. Okay.
dude.
So where I was,
Yeah.
I'll just tell you. I went to the Haven, and that's when I got introduced to meetings. They do 2 meetings a day, shoved down your throat. And well, at the time, I thought they were shoved down my throat. Okay, so that's when, and I also discovered women at that time. I hated women. Okay, so I keep on going to treatment after treatment, like I said, and I went to my last treatment, didn't work. The last time I got sober 15 months ago, I had actually a probation officer that had faith in me, and I had been to so many treatments. I had my big, humongous recovery toolbox, but I wasn't using them. And so I took the advice of everybody before me, and I shut up and I listened. And I have a hard time listening, but I did. And I started going to meetings whenever I felt triggered. I started shouting out my triggers. I started, enjoying women again, and actually, going and hanging out with them again and talking to them and having friends with them, being friends with them again, all that good stuff. But the difference it was this time around was I was doing it the way I wanted to do it, and no one was telling me what to do. You have to choose your own recovery path. Nobody, people can give you guidelines, and people can share and express their recovery and how they've done things, but you have to do it yourself. If you don't, it's not going to work. My recovery is so different than your recovery, and your recovery is so different than everybody's recovery. Um, and that's the thing that clicked with me, is that I have to do all the things that I have been taught to do, but I have to do it in my way, and I have to be happy with myself, and I have to do it my way pretty much. So now, instead of doing it the way everybody wants me to do, I do my own little CC recovery, and I do my dailies, and I pray, and I rely on my higher power, and I do all those things, but it's in my own way, so that I'm not feeling like I'm being told what to do, and that maybe that I'm doing it wrong. So that's kind of how I do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and you've done so good. I mean, and you've done so, like, in your recovery since you found it, you've had some pretty cool jobs. You've had
Yeah.
good, good experiences. You know, like, tell us some of the things, like some of the great joys that that recovery has brought you. I mean, obviously being a mom, and today having the opportunity to be a
Yes.
wife again soon, and a
Ah!
blended family. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, all that stuff is amazing. I'm actually in the process right now of getting custody back of my daughter. And I never thought that would happen. And I actually want to. How about that?
Yeah.
um, and just my family, having the trust of my parents again, being able to take my mom's credit card to the store, stuff like that, the simple things. Having a relationship with my higher power that, you know, just means so much to me. Everyday things, down to having my driver's license, insurance. Um, the things that I've done in my recovery that I've loved is I worked in recovery for the first, good year and a half of my recovery. I worked in rehab centers and was a tech, and I loved it. And when I wanted to give up, I would go to work, or I would listen to people's stories, or try to set the best example I could be to these people that needed me to be a good example. And that helps me so much in my recovery. I would recommend anybody working in recovery the first year. Another thing that I am doing in my life is I'm going back to school, and I'm going to get my SUD-C, which is drug and alcohol therapist.
Yeah.
So excited about that. I do definitely want to work in recovery. I think it's a wonderful field. But I think the best thing it's done for me today is I love myself, and I love myself more than anybody else does. And I don't have to have sex with someone to make them love me, and I don't have to buy somebody a gift to make them like me. And I can just be Cece today, and I can be a mom, and I can be, um, so many things that I wasn't able to be before. And that's what the most important thing is to me, is I can be a good example to so many people. I have integrity. I'm honest. I'm loyal. People hire me today. There's just so,
Employable.
yeah, yeah. I show up for meetings. I might not be the best techie, but I show up, just things like that. Things that I never thought were be possible or possible. Um, I have people that hit me up on the daily about getting sober. I still see people that I was homeless with that my heart breaks, but they'll have their time just like I did. Or we advocate or we go out and we share things with people, because I've been there and I understand. And that's all we can do is just spread the light and be examples.
What would you say, like, so the holidays are here. I mean, you're a mom who's lost your child. We've had just in our own recovery community. I mean, there's been multiple people just the last couple of weeks who've passed away. And, so what, as the holidays come and the holiday blues are real and COVID's here, like, what would you suggest to somebody to do to keep on top of their recovery? Because this is a scary time of year. I mean, a lot of people run from rehab right now. This is like, it's, I think you probably ran at
I
Christmas
did.
time. Yeah, well, no, it's real. It's real. It's scary. People want to be with their families, but we find any excuse to leave. But what advice can you offer to that person who might be struggling at this time of year, or any time of the year, really? I mean, it's been crazy.
Well, the opposite of addiction is connection, and that is the number one thing. I don't care who it is, really. I mean, unless they're going to get you in harm's way, but you have to find somebody. You have to find somebody. Reach out to anybody. Reach out. There are so many people I have found in our sober community that are so willing to help, no matter what.
Nicest people in the world.
It's morning, night, or day. I mean, anytime. There are so many people. I mean, even if you have to reach out to a hotline or walk into a meeting at any time. I think that's the biggest thing is connection. Or a lot of the things. I'll tell you what. The last 7 years, I didn't have my kids, and a lot of them when I was on drugs. But this last year, what I've done when I had been stressed, and I really do something that takes my mind off of it. I have learned how to craft and do all that stuff, where I pick up and go and clean, or like cook, Rach, you cook or do something. Just gets your mind off that. But connection for sure, and just screaming out when you have trials and tribulations, and scream out when you have triggers and stuff, because people need to know, and it loses its power. 100% when you tell people. So,
it does.
There's so many things going on right now, though.
I know, dude, it's crazy.
People have no excuse not to reach out.
Well, and there's so many people are so available just because the whole COVID thing. Like a lot of people that are strong in recovery are so aware. So, I mean, and there's so many things that every state that you live in is offering. Like there's help for those who want it. For the person who's like just getting sober and trying to give it out, like, what advice could you offer to that person? That's what I found the hardest. Well, you know what I mean? Like, the hardest part was like that first 3 days. That first week, 2 weeks later, and it was like, holy cow, am I going to be able to do this? Like,
well, you
and
didn't
it seems
do
like an
meetings.
eternity.
You really didn't do meetings at first, but I had the first year I had probably so many newcomer chimps I could like tile my house with them. And I'm not even kidding. It was horrible. But I think the best thing to do the first is do the 90-90. I really do. You have to wrap yourself around recovery 100%. Totally, like, wrap yourself around service position. I didn't do much service at the beginning, but I did go to a couple service meetings, and I tried. And I think that is one of the biggest things you have to do. You have to you just have to keep yourself involved. And I think delete your Facebook.
That's what I did. I only left like 3 or 4 people, and you were one of them that I didn't delete, or I might have deleted you and you got a new one and requested me, but there was very few, because I didn't want to be that person that was like, because I remember being mad at the people that got sober and wishing putting bad thoughts to the energy out there. And it was like, dude, screw that person. Like, they're doing good. F them. It ain't real, And so when I had to delete everybody because I needed to be healthy. But then I've also been able to, as the years went by, people started to I could let them be on there and let them see where I've gone and, to be like, oh my gosh, if Rachel could do it, and if CC could do it.
Right.
In the beginning,
you have
it's
to also
dangerous.
hold those boundaries because I have a really good friend. I love her to death, and she's gotten sober a couple of times. I was on the streets with her, and I've recently had to block her because even though I have been sober for 15, 16 months, there's certain things I have to do to this day.
Yeah.
At 15 months, at 3 years, at 10 years, you still have to renew your recovery every day. And a big part of that is boundaries. Yeah. And I wish those people well, and I love them, and my heart is with them always. And, but you have to do that. You have to. Right. Block is my favorite button.
Me too. My block game is strong, girl.
Yeah, me too.
It is strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and guys get on now and say, hey, sexy. And I go,
yeah, bye. Bye. Bye.
You don't gotta tell me I'm sexy. I know.
Yeah, you're like, bye. Oh my gosh, I love you. I'm so freaking proud of you. What a blessing it is. Like we get to the holidays here. It's 2020, craziest world of all. And we're not out in the snow sleeping in a tent or wondering where we have to go, and we very well could be, so it's such a blessing to be able to have you on the right or left side, whatever people are seeing on their end to me. And I just love you. I'm proud of you. I'm grateful for you. Like, as you said before, recovery is an everyday thing, and we have to show up for ourselves every single day. And you're doing that, and you're helping other people, and you're being of service, and you're creating a safe space, not only for you because you love yourself, but for other people to heal too. And that, some people aren't like that. Some people are just not helpers, and that's not their passion, and they're not good at it, and they don't have to be, but you are, and you're helping people, and I admire you, and I admire your journey. It's refreshing to see somebody, like we went through some shit. Oh, yeah. I remember my kid's dad taking my kids for me and crying at your house, and starting off in Rose Park and having to get my way to Lehigh 2 days later. I am just so glad that
people took so long.
Dude, I know. I tell people all the time, I'm like, dude, I started off in Rose Park and ended up in Lehigh, and like you were Lehigh. Like people don't. I'm like, you don't even know. I tried so hard, but it was here and it was there, and I'm just glad that we get to go. We don't have to live that way, and I'm grateful for you. And,
I'm grateful for you.
We're blessed.
You've come a long way, but
and we're gonna keep going longer.
But be better on the green side, better on the silver side.
Yeah. Men have to work. Buzz is being funny right now. Anyway, all right. So we will wrap it up. Thank you to everybody who was able to come on here and watch. If you guys are struggling, we are here 24 hours a day. I know CC's inbox is open if you ever need to find her on Facebook. My inbox is always open. If you're struggling, reach out. We're here to help you.
Thank you.
Yep. This